Hello, Cheryl here, the No Sugar Coach. Welcome to video number 5 of my Feast on Wellness series. In this video, I want to share a story, my story. It's something I want to share because so many friends and family members are perplexed by my way of eating. They want to know why I don't eat sugar or carbs, not even, from time to time or in moderation. And some even want to know when I'm going to go back to eating normal food. They think, I don't know what they think, but I know that they kind of freak out a little bit when I say I only eat meat these days, cholesterol and clogged arteries and all of that stuff. Anyway, so the reasons why I don't eat sugar anymore. So first off, what do I mean by sugar? So beyond the white crystals that we put in our tea and coffee, I'm referring to any food that easily turns to sugar in your blood when it's digested. So those include the normal foods that most people eat, like rice and pasta and bread and even fruit juices. I mean, I know that they all sound very healthy and all of that. Um, but for some people, they just are not. It includes, of course, having chosen to also not eat highly processed foods nor junk food. So, anyways, you get the idea. Now, I have to explain to people that I became addicted to the pleasurable effects that those certain foods were having on me. And now, not everybody becomes addicted to these foods, but I did. And maybe you suspect, this has happened to you as well. So here's a snapshot of some of the things that I was experiencing that drove me to quit sugar once and for all. Maybe you can relate to some of these as well. So when I ate those kinds of foods, my energy would like literally tank. And my mood would plummet, and my ability to think clearly was just about non-existent. I could function, but that was hardly living at my optimal best. I just plain didn't feel very good. And sometimes on the mornings after binging on crap the day before, it was like I had a hangover. And I know what that feels like because I've had my share of too much wine in the past, and I don't do that anymore either. It was just like I was feeling like I was living in a blurry fog all day long. And on some days, I felt like I was wearing cement boots. I was just like dragging my butt around. And oh my God, so many times I was tormented with terrible feelings of guilt, thinking that I was being such a glutton. But it was just like I couldn't help myself. I felt anxious quite often. And on some days, there was even an air of, doom and gloom, maybe mild depression. And for me, that was especially scary because, I'm a naturally optimistic and happy-go-lucky, easygoing kind of person. So when I felt that way, to make me feel better, guess what I did? I would turn to those foods again because let's face it, ice cream fixes everything. Now you don't have to be a genius to see how this would play out in a never-ending cycle. Feel bad, eat crap. Now I'd look at normal people and, my friends and family members who could eat a piece of cake and leave it at that, and they wouldn't even gain weight. Now, for me, one bite of that cake would set me off on a binge that could last anywhere from a day to several months, before I got myself back under control. And I would keep berating myself. What was wrong with me? Why couldn't I get my shit together? I knew eating the way I was eating, caused me to lose control, and it would keep me, continue to keep gaining weight. So, in the whole time, I was actually trying to desperately do the complete opposite. I was wanting to have control in my life and I wanted desperately to lose weight. So in time, I got wise and I realized that euphoric feeling of eating something sweet or carby only lasted a short while, but the negative fallout would last so much longer. It was kind of a fantasy to believe that sugar brought me happiness when in fact it was stealing my good health. I got so tired of looking in the mirror and being so disappointed with the person that was looking back at me. I had the puffy face, the growing waistline, like, who was this person? It certainly wasn't who I felt that I was. I didn't want to keep starting my days feeling disappointed with myself yet again. And I mean, think about it. What a terrible way to start each day. Now, I didn't want to feel I had to hide when someone took out their phone to take a group photo because I had so much shame around my appearance. I did that all the time. I'd hide behind tall people. I'm short. I could get away with that. But that's no way to live. I didn't want to shop in specialty sized clothing stores anymore. I wanted to shop for the normal size clothing like all my friends did. So now here's the rest of the story. I started to notice that just before I ate these sugary or carby foods, I was having an internal battle, a private conversation with an invisible entity of sorts. There was me who didn't want the junk, and there was the other identity or entity that wanted the junk very badly. So, what was that about? So that's a strong clue that I was dealing with an addiction. And here are other signs. I had urges and cravings for those foods. I don't get urges and cravings for steak. But these foods, I really had incredible desires for them. I had a perceived inability to control myself around those foods after the first bite. I had an overpowering drive to get my hands on some of these foods, especially if life got stressful or if life got very exciting. It didn't matter, any sort of strong emotion. And I really wanted to get my hands on these foods. And I continued to eat these foods even when faced with getting heavier day by day, risking getting type 2 diabetes and having blood pressure problems and so on. So people ask me, how did you quit? Now, the same way that I stopped smoking, the same way that I stopped drinking alcohol, I decided to stop. I made a plan. I worked the plan. It was really that simple. I just stopped and I stayed stopped. And to this day, I choose to abstain from sugar and highly processed foods. It's just not my food. And no, I cannot eat those foods in moderation like other people can. But I'm okay with that. It's not like I'm white knuckling through each day. I just don't eat those foods anymore. I learned how to pay attention to my thoughts and to recognize the addictive voice I was telling you about, this other entity, the voice of my primitive brain. And the primitive part of the brain is the oldest region of the brain. It includes the limbic system, which is involved in survival behaviors and mood regulation. It governs our instincts and our emotional responses. And I learned that it plays a central role in addiction. Now, these regions of the brain have evolved to strengthen certain behaviors for survival, including things like eating and reproducing. So when we eat or we make love, it releases a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And a dopamine hit feels really, really good. Now, some people get a particularly more profound effect from certain foods or drugs or alcohol or behaviors, while some people don't. There's nothing wrong with your brain either way. For those who are hyper responsive to this can cause the brain to seek more of that feel good response, right? But over time, the brain begins to adapt and reduces its sensitivity to that neurotransmitter, the dopamine. And when that happens, our tolerance increases. So we need more of the food or the drugs to get the same blissful effect. That's when one chocolate bar is no longer enough. This is what makes it so difficult to stop using the substances that do us harm. The primitive part of our brain perceives not getting these foods or drugs as a threat. It goes into an automatic or a reflex like response, which creates cravings and drives compulsive behaviors. It makes it hard to control rational thinking and why we behave against our own better judgment. But it's not impossible to quit. It's a decision that's within our control. It's a choice that's also within our control. And it's learning to tell when the primitive part of our brain is calling the shots. So, as a certified food addiction counselor, it's my job to help you learn the skills to quit the foods that are keeping you from having your best life, to help you regain, your health and your and to support you with your weight loss efforts. If you'd like to learn more about food addiction and how it may be playing a role in keeping you from achieving those, but the personal the goals that you have and to help you with permanent weight loss, just leave me a comment in the notes, or use my contact form. I've left a link to my contact form in the notes below. We can just schedule a nice casual 20-minute discovery call, nice conversation to find out how I may be able to help you. And you'd be amazed at what can happen in just 9 weeks of working with me. So I hope this has been informative. Remember to give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel, or visit nosugarcoach.com. Now I will see you in the next video. Until then, eat well, be kind to yourself, and keep a smile on your face. Bye bye.